All right, I start recording.
All right. So you had some stuff you wanted to go over for the Israel discussion we had last week, right?
Exactly. Yeah, let me get to it here. So, whenever Bob Murphy says anything on Twitter, I'm always interested in like what he's getting himself into. And this one was interesting because let me share my screen here. Where was it? I thought I saved it to his actual tweet, but it looks like this might be the tweet that he responded to. There's no way I'll be able to scroll back far enough if I go to Bob Murphy's page because he talks so much.
It's prolific.
Let's see here. Let me go to Bob Murphy's. I've yet to get that follow back, but that's fine.
He doesn't follow you.
No, I'm not
He's
important.
liked a couple of your tweets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And responded or no?
I don't think he's responded to anything.
Oh, I thought he did. Maybe that was back when I was reading Twitter backwards.
Yeah. Well, he
A
might
lot of
have.
discussions didn't make sense.
Right. Never gonna be able to find it. Wait. Okay. Yeah. Let me just go see if I can find it in my DMs with you. Cause it wasn't that far. Yeah, this one. Okay. I think I can do it if I just type in exactly what he said. Oh, right. He responded to Dan Bermawi. That's how you find it.
Oh, is that somebody I should know?
No, but it's just a name to look for. Here we go. The very first one. There we go. That's how I found it. There we go. Okay, so this guy says you keep telling everyone they have no argument. I wrote a 10,000 word comprehensive response to you. So I was immediately intrigued. Not only was that
Yeah,
intriguing, but also Robert P. Murphy over here was really curious too. And then he read it, and his conclusion was he didn't find it persuasive, which I never do either. So but I am excited to read this because if he went that hardcore
right.
for it and is supposedly like really actually covering it, I really do want to know what he said.
Yeah.
So let's see here. How are we gonna do this? Are we gonna read this out loud to the readers, to the listeners?
Is is there a character limit to a Twitter post? 10,000 seemed like
Not anymore.
a lot.
Not
Really,
not anymore, brother. All you
that
got,
is wild.
all you got to do is buy the blue check, and you're allowed to do this. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. Well, he titled them, right? So he's got the history of the conflict.
Right.
All right. So let's scroll through that a little bit. Yep, the Balfour Declaration. What did he say about that? So he's saying that Jewish people settled there, and then they were drawing in the Arabs because they were maybe had a higher standard of living or something, right? Life
Mm-hmm.
was better there. And then they had the Balfour Declaration. I kind of know a little bit about that. All right. So then what's he?
So he's acknowledging that they were just trying to get land and create their own little settlement in the area at the
Yeah,
time, just like everybody else was. Okay.
right. I think what I'm not seeing in what he's saying, maybe he gets to it later because this is so long,
Yeah.
but I definitely have heard that the and these weren't like offhand remarks. I think I even sent you one the other day, maybe, but um, like maybe U.S. intelligence or just people reporting on that area at the time were like the Zionists aren't there just to like live peacefully with the Arabs. They expect them all to be gone
Hmm.
and us to take and them to take over. I feel like that's not like the way he's portraying it is like, oh, they moved in and everybody was trying to live peacefully, and then the Arabs were like, no, we don't want this. But how much can you want someone in your land that's trying to take over and probably has the means to do it because they had the backing of so many, high ranking or wealthy Europeans, where the Arabs are just whatever they were in that area. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It sounds
I
like,
did
yeah,
I
it's
just feel
it's it's saying that they're like kind of on equal footing with everyone else who is trying to do the same thing, and it's kind of like saying that they are just happen to be the ones that won out.
right. I just don't feel like I feel like it's disingenuous to tell the history that way. And I feel like if you try to tell it in a way that, I don't know, shows that, hey, both sides are human, both sides they probably want overall something that's good, but the means that they're using to do it are not the best, and it leads to a lot of this conflict. And then if you try to explain it that way, charitable to both sides, and calling both sides out where they're, I don't know, where they're lacking, then it's like, okay, well now you're an anti-Semite.
And at least acknowledge the disparity or the difference in position too. I feel like that gets
Right.
overlooked so much. It's like you're, I mean, it's true that they do brutal things, and they're not as like necessarily as precise, quote unquote, as Israel is, even though they're not necessarily precise either. But it's
Right.
like it's a difference in capability and it's a difference in position. It's like you have
You're
to,
talking about present day.
yeah, present day.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're judging by the same standard as if they're both just two equal nation states. I don't know. It's frustrating. I know that isn't necessarily related to the history as much, but it is something frustrating when I just want them to admit something like upbeat. I'll know we're talking in good faith if you don't make certain arguments. Certain arguments just fly out the window for me.
Yeah.
He's really got me with this sentence. This better prove to be true. You better tell me.
I love that he compares it to like Canada and the US, because Canada's kind of like just another state that we let think is independent, right? For now.
Hmm.
That's probably a good comparison. They just don't realize we're about to flatten them and take them over.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, that really pisses them off for some reason. It must suck to not live in the greatest country in the world.
Couldn't even relate.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad that Americans are getting more comfortable with that too. I hated that whole thing where like Americans are always so deferent to everything they say. It's like there's always some contingent that just has to say, "Yeah, they're right. Europeans are so much better than us." It's like, "No, fuck you. Everyone wants to come here. We're the best." You can
Right.
cry. You can cry. Like I feel like that's been changing. I feel like more and more people, even lefties, sometimes will do that. They'll be like, "Yeah, no,
Oh, really?
yeah." Sometimes depends. There's a lot of contrarians. There's a lot of different factions on both sides now. I feel like it's not as black and white as it used to be, or at least maybe I'm able to see it at a micro like a micro level now, and I can see that not everybody's the same. It is nice to see that. But we have like analogs. I feel like in both sides too. Like on the left, they have people like Destiny, and then on the right, we have people like who's that guy? Like James Lindsay, like people whose whole position is just to be like a contrarian asshole, and they like thrive off everybody hating them. God, he thrives off of it. He's the guy
Yeah,
that coined the term woke right. I don't know if you've looked into him at all.
I've heard the name a bunch, and I need to. I need to be more familiar with him as much as I've heard him. I feel like with that Dan's last point, another he doesn't really address. Still, I mean, to me, if someone's making this claim, the Palestinians' inability to vote, I think they're referencing the control that Israel has over these areas, right? They're not just saying, "Oh, this is just one specific issue that we have. They can't vote." It's like, well, they can't vote, and the government of Israel has this like stronghold over them,
Mm.
and he doesn't address that anywhere. Like I would just, if I just read this, I would think, "Oh, wow, yeah, this is crazy." They just, why would they even be able to vote? This is meaningless. They're just two independent countries doing their own independent thing.
And yet they're completely sealed off from the rest of the world. Nothing gets in without Israel's approval.
Right. You wouldn't get that at all from his rebuttal here.
Yeah.
And
Anyways,
again, it is a rebuttal. Maybe he understands that the people I'm talking to already know this, so maybe that's why he didn't include it. If I was trying to maybe still man his position, but it's still, I don't. Yeah, I don't really. I mean, if you have a particular section that you'd like to read, I don't. I agree with Bob. I don't find his arguments persuasive.
yeah, I should have done my research into them. I thought it would be more fun to read it in person, but I'm not going to do that to the audience. Number
I just
one,
wish.
I can't both listen and read. I'm like too high for that, and I'm not even good at it normally, anyways. So
Right.
it was never gonna work out. So
I just don't think. I wish that. Oh, what am I trying to say? I feel like Dave, and really he's the one I listen to the most on this issue, and I feel like he presents both sides pretty well, and then says, "Hey, but given the power disparity, we should be a little bit more critical of Israel and their actions in this because the ones that are being controlled, their actions kind of make sense in this context,
mm,
and the ones in power have the ability to do something about this. They get to control the level of the response." And I don't feel like anybody who can make that argument, but also still supports Israel, like can look at both sides and say, okay, here's what each side is doing right and wrong. However, I still think Israel should be doing what it's doing.
right.
I
Did
just
you
feel like
watch?
they're blatantly one-sided.
Did you watch any of that episode of Piers Morgan with Scott Horton and the two Mossad guys?
I did. I watched the whole thing, but it didn't have my full attention the whole time.
That's fair. Yeah, let me bring up something from there if you don't mind.
Yeah, I love when Scott said, "Did you tap Bill Clinton?"
Okay,
Just as
that
a,
that was what I was just gonna show you, but I
oh,
just
I'm
thought it was
sorry.
so
Sorry, I didn't mean
funny.
to ruin it.
No, 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 no,
So,
no.
so
All
funny.
good, all good. No, it was so funny. There are other bangers too, though. Like,
I feel like it was more towards the end.
yeah, it was mostly, but at one point they like tell on themselves without, like, he didn't even have to do half the things he said. Like, they were just telling on themselves the entire time. Oh, it was the nuclear part. It was like, are you nuclear or are you not? Well, let me just find that part. That's the funniest part.
Yeah,
They're probably the last people on earth.
Their interest, obviously, to get America to do what they want. But it's not in the American people's interest to have a world empire at all. Donald Trump just ran horses or
Given its long history, is that they're probably the last people on earth you want
I feel like it was
hunting you
before
down.
this.
It was like back here, maybe.
Enemies.
Yeah, because
And
it was when that guy was talking on the left, the former Mossad leader or whoever he was.
Right.
Professional intelligence apparatuses.
okay, but
I,
Danny, let me ask you. Danny,
I
let me
know
ask
that
you
we
something.
have.
Danny, let me just jump in.
Yes.
Danny, let me ask you something. As a former head of Mossad, if Jeffrey Epstein had been working with Mossad,
Oh wait, this is
I
another
don't
really
remember if it
funny
was
part.
before or after this,
But
but yeah,
this part's really funny. You remember this
I
part?
loved this one. Yeah.
would you even tell us?
No.
Would you even tell us?
Admit it.
Well,
Exactly.
As
So
far,
how do we
far
know?
as I understand, as far as you have to believe.
I love that part. You have to. It's just that's what I feel like is the bedrock of all of Israel. If you're not in it for Israel, you have to believe in
Yeah.
Israel. If you don't, then the that you're beyond saving. The facts and you're like facts and logic are all within believing in Israel. Everything else just
Who's this middle guy?
bullshit.
He was like a former CIA guy, right?
Yeah, some fucking CIA guy. Like, not that I trust him either, but I'm glad he was there to nod his head whenever Scott was saying something cool. At least.
Yeah, him and Scott seem to at least like the same parts, and then this guy on the right, dude, he has me convinced that he might be the real guy behind Jeffrey Epstein. Like the way he was defending him, and then he was like, "Oh man, I definitely would have known if something nefarious was going on." It's like, man, all you're doing is convincing me that you're the real villain here.
Yeah, I can't even. There's too many good parts in this. I think the whole thing almost is a banger, especially probably the second half is all good.
Yeah,
So if anybody out there hasn't watched it, you should watch that. We don't have to spend all day on this, but man, everything is like that. Scott Horton gets some good bangers in there, and then the other two guys over here own themselves constantly. So I don't know. The whole thing's hilarious, but I think we could wrap up a bow on Israel, I think, after today for a little while until something really interesting happens. Well, hopefully, like
which
another big
hopefully
debate
it's
or something.
that would be nice too. I was thinking more along the lines of maybe I think Trump said pull this up just so I'm not quoting it
Yeah.
horribly, but did Trump talk to Netanyahu? Maybe not talk. I don't know how they communicate, but um, like suggest, hey, you should probably start letting aid into Gaza. And I think Netanyahu was like, yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
Oh, Trump
Oh,
insists he pressed Netanyahu on Gaza relief. That one, perhaps.
yeah, let's check this
When
out.
Gaza came
I
up,
haven't seen
and I
this
said,
yet.
gotta be good to Gaza. Those people are suffering. We got to be good to Gaza. We're going to take care of them. There's a very big need for medicine, food and medicine, and we're taking care of it.
In terms of like opening up more access points or
Very hard.
pushing the Israelis
We are
to open up more access
very
points?
hard to get food and medicine into Gaza.
How did the Prime Minister respond to that?
Well, felt well about it. But Gaza.
Interesting.
I
I don't
mean,
know.
just leaving on a positive note. Hopefully that means something.
I like it. It's a good direction. It's just the way he's saying it is kind of weird. But that's just Trump for you. You never really know. But
Yeah, she's also trying to like get specifics, and he doesn't have them. Like,
true.
what are you gonna do if someone's saying that? Like, I'm trying to give you some good news. Start spinning something positive.
Right. You're right. Thinking about it through that lens, that's true. But whenever he has to like, oh god, I just hate how we have like Netanyahu. It's almost like yeah, the big man Netanyahu, my the big guy, where the mainland from the mainland or whatever, the big boss. He said that it's okay if we open up a couple more access points for them and get them some medicine and some food.
Hmm.
It's like, dude, fuck Netanyahu.
Yeah.
I hate that thing too. I know this is so silly, but that whole thing on Twitter that went crazy where I mean it goes crazy every time because he keeps doing it, but Trump always pulls out the chair for Netanyahu every time and lets him sit and then pushes it in. It's like, dude,
Show me. I've never seen
okay,
that.
oh, you never seen it? Okay, Trump Netanyahu chair. I think it'll probably be it. Maybe this is it.
Netanyahu meets
No, I'm not gonna watch this Chinese shit.
Netanyahu meets Trump at the White House.
There it is.
Does he not do that for anybody else?
Not my president, dude. Not my president after that.
That's
No,
so
I
funny.
haven't seen him do that. I feel like everyone else, he like, I don't know if you've heard Rogan talk about it, but he says that he's famous for grabbing people's arms and yanking them in
Yeah.
really hard, like a power
Does he
move.
not do that with Netanyahu?
I don't know. This
Let's
doesn't.
see if I can find him.
That doesn't seem like it though. You don't push in another dude's chair like that.
Yeah.
That'll get you stoned in some countries.
I'm gonna pull up like 2 videos of him. Wasn't even a a real handshake, but nope. Here's another one.
Where you throw him
Nope,
up?
he doesn't pull him in.
You throwing it up
I'm
somewhere?
just YouTubing him. No, I
Oh,
wasn't. I
okay.
was gonna try to find a good one, but all right, yeah, I'm gonna throw it on the sheet real quick.
All right, cool.
I'll just put it right here.
Perfect.
Now I'm on it. Come on in. Come on in.
This is definitely not how he greets anybody else.
Greatest dinner I've ever had. Come on, let's get it.
Oh, he did yank him.
He did kind of pull him in, didn't he?
Yeah, he did yank him.
I didn't have this angle on the first one I watched, but yeah, that was I've never seen him do the what kind of handshake? What is that called? I don't know.
Yeah, dapped him up a little bit. I don't know if that's the word, but well, let's get a little.
Yep.
Let's get a little. Let's get a little granular here. There we go.
He definitely doesn't let him meet in the middle.
That was
And Trump's
failed.
not moving. Yep.
Yep, yank.
There he goes.
Yank. This part
Alright.
was very Caucasian. Watch this.
Yeah, it was.
Grabbed his thumb.
Wait, I don't.
Thumb. And then
Yeah, that was Netanyahu misreading
Yeah.
the high hand from Trump.
Yep. Yep. There's been a question whether or not Jewish people are white or not, and I think the answer is yes.
Yep.
They're white when they feel like it. All right, what's
Oh,
next up
man.
on the agenda?
Oh yeah, I wanted to show you that. Yeah, the child incentive there.
Let's do it.
Meantime, President Trump endorsing the idea of giving up to $5,000.
I've heard a variation on this a million different ways, and every
Right.
time I think, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Never really, because I mean, anything good for anybody is just good. Just do good things for people. Don't make them pay taxes or whatever. Give them money back. It's always good.
To mothers to help increase birth rates.
Mr. President, there are reports that you're considering doing something for moms across the country, giving them some type of bonus so that they have. Are you considering that? Or?
Sounds like a good idea to me.
Maggie Anders
What fucking language is that lady speaking? I can only understand it through the subtitles.
is the host of Undoctrination and a content creator for the Foundation
Yeah, man.
for Economic
And it's so vague. I
Education.
tried to find a couple other videos, and they all just quote that one.
Right. Okay. So is that the
But you could.
meat of it?
That's it. But see, you can listen to her response, and I'm curious what you think about what she has to
Now,
say.
Maggie, what
Let's
do you
listen.
think? Is a $5,000 incentive a good idea for people to have kids?
Sure.
Well, Todd, thank you so much for having.
Well, okay. Here, I want to give a caveat actually, and I'll have to see
Yeah.
what she says about it. My thought would be, you got to make sure they're married too, because it can't just be like
Oh.
a food stamp thing
Yep.
or
No,
whatever.
that's
Yeah, because then they'll just do the same thing they do now, is pop kids out for welfare checks or whatever. You know that thing
right.
that like fucking conservative boomers always say that, I don't know why I'm quoting now. I don't even know if that's a real thing, but it sounds realistic.
Oh,
It-
I think it is real.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm so glad I'm not speaking out of my ass. I don't have enough like information about this kind of thing. I just know the anecdotes that I've gotten from like Thomas Sowell and stuff like that, and he's like the big one for that type of thing. He always says that stuff. Like as soon as that kind of welfare with those kinds of incentives got introduced in like the mid 20th century, was when things started going downhill, and that's what all the
Yeah.
data I know about is from kind of him. So it is kind of like my one point of failure, but okay. All right, let's finish.
Well, I know.
I'm sorry. Go
Well, I
ahead.
was going to add. I definitely know people who have claimed that,
Mhm.
and it's like, man, if they didn't just think of it themselves, right? It has to be learned behavior
Mhm.
because the people I'm thinking of were younger, like right out of high school or maybe right around college aged. It's like you're not just coming up with this scheme by yourself, probably at this age. You've seen other family members do it,
Right. It's like a path in life almost. It's really
right?
sinister, but
Having me this morning. While I wholeheartedly agree with the Trump administration that America is facing a fertility epidemic, I don't think a $5,000 baby bonus is really going to cut it. You know, some estimates put the average cost of raising a child in America at $23,000. By the time that child is 18, that's $414,000, not accounting for inflation or the cost of college tuition.
Yeah, I can't have kids, man. I'll never make enough money for it.
Americans are facing a cost of living crisis. We're tired of being taxed to death, and we're tired of our dollar being devalued through wasteful government spending programs and Federal Reserve money printing. And I think this is going to make that problem worse.
Yeah, Maggie, I agree with your top line on this. Kudos to the president for tackling this issue because it is a big deal. Look at these stats. The 2024 fertility rate, that's just last year, remains well behind the rate required.
I think you can probably
to
stop it
replace
after this. Just I want to see those numbers. But if I think we kind of hit on this issue in another episode, or maybe just another discussion, that I know so many women that just don't want kids for whatever reason, right?
Right.
I even feel like a lot of men might feel similarly, but I don't think it's as big of an issue for them, right? I think most men just expect that they'll probably have kids, except if you have someone maybe like high anxiety or something, versus like maybe skip ahead. I think they have even a chart that shows like the reasons given for not wanting kids. Yeah, right there. Stuff like this just makes me think like there has to be two things going on that come to mind. One is just the anxiety and fear that we're always given. I don't know if it comes from the news or where it comes from. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, but like
Mm.
I think it's universally acknowledged that we live in the best time ever. I mean, there's less poverty and war and starvation than ever before.
Right.
But I hear so many people say, "Oh, I don't want to bring kids into a world like this," or something like that, or all the suffering. I'm like, man, this is crazy. How do we get this far? And this is the point where we stop.
Do you think that
Concerns
they're
about the
being
environment.
do you think they're being sincere when they say that, or do you think they're virtue signaling? Because sometimes I think they mask what I think is the real issue. I think
Yeah.
it's the real issue because it's hits closest to home for me personally, where it's
Okay.
like I grew up in a time where it's really easy to stay a kid forever, and you just
Yeah.
you one day you wake up with a gray hair out of nowhere, and you're like, oh wait, yeah, I really am getting older, but I've been living like a kid the whole. It's so easy, it's so comfortable. Like
Yeah.
your job takes care of everything. Some jobs even take care of like housing and stuff. I mean, everybody in the military is just a big baby a lot of the times. Like everything's taken
Right.
care of for them. But I don't know. I just feel like it's so easy now. There's so, like all these kinds of toys and entertainment and media and stuff is geared towards, you know, adults and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and they just don't want to make that commitment because I feel like that is like the real like a marriage. You can always get a divorce. It's whatever, but
Right.
like the real first step in like saying I am not a kid anymore is
Yeah.
having a kid. There's no going
Well,
back
I
after that.
think
And I feel like a lot of people these
I,
days are scared of that and they're saying
yeah,
whatever as far as excuses.
I agree with everything you're saying. I think that's probably those first two um reasons on the list. They just don't want to, or they want to focus on other things.
Yeah.
Other things might be a career, but it could also just be like, backpacking or surfing or just, playing video games or doing whatever you want.
Yeah.
Those things though at least make sense to me. I can kind of relate. I think they're based in reality, right? Maybe they're not good reasons,
Yeah.
but everything you just said was real versus these last three. Maybe they can't afford to. I mean, that definitely takes sacrifice, but concerns with the world and concerns about the environment to
Well,
me are
that was my
just
original question. I think I got lost because I rambled forever. My sincere question to you was, do you think that they really have anxieties like that? Because my assertion was that I think they say that to virtue signal. Do you think that's not the case? Do you think they really are?
oh
Do you think they really do fear the environment? I think there's some subset that has that level of paranoia, but do you think it's for the most part people who say that are being sincere?
yeah. I mean, I think there are people now, and maybe I'm wrong about this, and maybe I'm just very easily manipulated, but it just seems to me that so many people have anxiety about things that don't even make sense to me.
Mm,
Like afraid of like. people who are afraid of driving, for example. It's like I've been driving my whole life. I couldn't. I mean, in Indiana, I had to be like 16 in 1 month and 1 day. And on that day, I left school. I went to get my driver's license immediately, and I drove home. Like I didn't waste a minute. And it's just foreign to me, the people who are like, "Oh, I'm never going to do this because I'm afraid of it," or um, I don't know. So I feel like I've had to have conversations with people I care about that I would trust, and I wouldn't think they're trying to manipulate me about them just listening to the news and all the negativity, and they're really like terrified about the state of the world.
Okay.
I don't know. It kind of reminds me of when I was a kid. My mom would she would always talk about the Bible and the end of the world and the end times and stuff. She's one of those people who thinks every sign of everything is a sign that the end times are coming.
All right.
I remember having nightmares like the world was ending. And that's kind of what I feel like those people are going through on a daily basis.
Yep. I think you're
I
right.
could be way off, but it's just to me that's not grounded in reality for the most part, especially not for 38% of people that don't want to have kids saying that that's a concern of theirs.
I think the
Oh,
reason I couldn't believe
these
him is
percentages don't add up, by the way.
right. It's
It had to
probably
be multiple
like it
choice.
had to be you select all that apply. But I think I really yeah, I agree with your analogy there. Um I think for me it was hard to it was hard for me to relate to it, and maybe that's why I assumed they were kind of being deceitful, because maybe in like that would have been like my
Yeah.
high school logic or middle school logic for like, because I used to be kind of like a lib kind of in that way in high school, and
Okay.
I could think of myself as like kind of not really wanting kids at the time and saying something like that, like we don't need to bring any more people into the world for one reason or another, whether it's like the environment or whatever. And so yeah, so I kind of like maybe because I couldn't relate to it, actually like taking it seriously. But now that you say like the heaven and hell thing and like the end times and revelations and stuff like that, that makes me think, yeah, okay, I can remember a time, even though my parents weren't that religious like your mom was. I've definitely had like trips to church where I came home thinking, okay, yeah, I'm going to hell or something like bad's gonna happen. So I can imagine kind of being in that mindset now. I think that helps me relate to it the way you put it. So yeah, I think it's
It's
definitely
still wild
possible.
to
But
me.
it is still
Like you have to
wild,
be living in your own echo chamber, your own bubble
right?
to view the world in that perspective.
It's still illogical. I can just understand the feeling of that actually falling for something like that, but um, it's still crazy that people worry about that kind of thing when the Obamas and the Clintons and stuff are buying oceanside property as we speak. It's like no one actually believes this stuff.
Yeah, and do you think you've experienced any of this firsthand? I feel like the people who are anxious about this have probably, I mean, you live in your own house, you have your own air conditioning and TV and entertainment anytime you need it. Like you've faced almost no suffering.
Hmm. So you create your own
I don't know.
suffering.
You just maybe get it on from news and social media, and you see all these horrible things and people arguing about different things and arguing about all of this, and you don't really get to relate to, you know, 50 to 100 years ago. If I lived like I do now, but just with no connection to the outside, I wouldn't have a clue. I'd be like, oh man, this life is great. I need nothing. But then
Right.
someone tells me, man, there's 50% of the world is suffering and starving, and I am flooded with that information all day, every day, then my perspective's going to change. And really, my life didn't change at all.
Right.
I think about that when it comes to like racism and how big of a conversation that was over the past couple years, or
Hmm.
really always is. It's like how many people are experiencing this on a day-to-day basis, and I mean actually experiencing it, not attributing something to racism. You know what I mean? It's like, oh wow, this
Yeah.
is actually a racist experience that I just had,
Do you think that the
and
news has been like making it? Do you think the news has always been pushing scare narratives that like make the world kind of worse if you believe in it hard enough, or do you do you think that they've become more like malevolent and using that as clickbait and watch bait all this time, or do you think that in the back in the day it just wasn't as widespread because of the technology, but now we're able to pump it out 20 the same content back then that was kind of pumping out that brainwashing is able to do it now like at mass scale better with like the internet and more access to cable. I always think about that. I always think, was there ever a time when the media just wasn't evil or it had morals?
Y-
People always say back in the day it did, but I don't know if it ever did. I've heard counter examples, so I don't know. I just feel like it's maybe that's what
Yeah,
people like to. My real question is there ever been a time where people were just happy, just being having happy news all the time that wasn't trying to like
right.
brain rot them, or has it always been like that from the start? That's what people want because then it becomes a little more black pilled for me. I start thinking, well, is is that just what people they want that negativity in their life and they kind of go because I kind of gravitate towards it too. I kind of want to be pissed off sometimes, even though I don't think
Yeah.
about it. I don't think about it in those terms. But sorry,
Or just like having
yeah.
something to debate is interesting,
Right? People want to
even in
struggle.
the best case.
People want to challenge. They want to be mentally challenged. I guess not in that way. I just mean mentally stimulated, not like. Uh,
Yeah.
I do wish I was more mentally challenged. I wish I wasn't so goddamn smart and thinking about all these hard issues all the time. I'm just kidding.
Hey, I'm sorry to do this. Give me just a second.
Yeah, no problem.
President Donald Trump.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Kids were having a sleepover. They look forward to it on the weekends, but it was getting a little wild.
Was it like with
Like
friends coming over, or just them all together sleeping together?
no, yeah, they have two in each room, but they like to all sleep in the same room on the weekend. I don't know why. It'd be so miserable. They're just going to sleep. But
That's definitely something me and my
the
brother and sister would do.
I was just gonna address something you said. I feel like the you were talking about the news, kind of like getting is it worse now or has it always been that way?
Right.
And I obviously never watched the news from back in the day very much, but I feel like there's probably always been a a response to like the fear mongering, right? And especially when you have the people in power, the government that has its hand in it or has full control over it, they can use that fear to create emergencies, and now everyone has to they have a reason to gain more power and more money, more authority, right? I think that's been universal, but I think they probably just got better at it, more streamlined until they got so I don't want to say greedy is not the right word, but just it became so blatant, right? I feel like now that's why the media can't be trusted because it's on every single channel. You're getting the same thing. I love those like montages where they show every local news station across the country saying the same thing word for word.
You know what? I got some bad news about one of those.
Oh no.
It kind of had a relatively logical explanation for at least one of them.
Okay.
Not the ones where it's like 80% the same and across different networks and stuff, because those are kind of like those are eerie. They're just talking about like that's like the talking point thing where somehow they all got the same script. But the one I'm talking
Yeah.
about is the one they showed on Joe Rogan, where like here, let me actually pull it up.
Okay. Yeah. Pull that one up. That might be the one I was thinking about. Either way, the point that I was trying to make is that I feel like
Yeah, from
now
Anderson.
they're just saying that we have or now it's just more clear, like, people will see, "Hey, they were trying to propagandize us, and it's not working as well because we're less trusting because they've ramped it up so much, and there's so much access now that we see it everywhere, and we also can see it exposed more easily." So I think it's
Exactly.
becoming more difficult.
And everybody's a researcher. Everyone wants to look things up and figure things out and
Right.
be right and stuff. So, bro, everyone's doing all the research. You have just all these researchers, and all these people have more free time than they've ever had to just look up stuff and prove the media wrong and
Yeah.
stuff. So, yeah, it's a recipe for disaster for them. But this is the one I was
that
talking
video
about.
where it shows local news people all saying like the exact same thing. That's it.
Push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is
Okay, so it is scary and it is terrifying and it is like weird that they even
Yeah.
the broadcast itself is more weird. But the thing is, these are
Mhm.
all like the same company owns every single one of these local Fox news stations. So they didn't hide the fact that they just
But
gave them a script to read out, like for that
but
day.
go back.
Yeah.
That would make sense, but, like, one of those is CBS and one of them is NBC. Are they all owned by the same
They might be like, that's a good point. Maybe not though, but they might be. But that was the explanation that I saw in a comment, and it looked very reasonable to me. I was like, okay, maybe not. Maybe the world's not as crazy as I thought, but it's like maybe if you take it up the chain, then one fucking media company owns all these things. Who knows? It really doesn't. Yeah, even that explanation doesn't take away from the creepiness of it. It's just eerie and
Yeah.
weird, and the message itself is eerie.
And it just doesn't make sense to me because you can see the different I feel like they're all competitors. I don't feel like CBS, NBC, or Fox are owned by the same company,
Okay. And it wasn't like it could have been like a federal regulation mandate. Hey, you have to read this disclaimer or something too. Like
which is creepy to me. That's the creepy thing.
right? Even see the explanation itself would have to make it more creepy. There's no getting around it. It's weird. You're right.
Yeah,
I
that's the creepy part is that they probably did that.
I think
Hey,
I
you
only
have to do
wanted to
this.
clarify that because I had recently read that comment, so it seemed really relevant that this randomly came up today. But
Yeah, man, we were both being propagandized in the new way. We're not I just don't fully understand it yet.
right.
Hey, hold on though. Back to the children incentive before
Yeah.
we go into these trade deficits. I
Yeah,
have a
yeah, yeah. Go
question
for
for
it.
you
Absolutely.
because it seemed like you kind of supported them at first, which I understand. Like I support us having more kids. I think that would be better for the United States.
Yeah.
Um, but when we start talking about the government, not, I mean, this wasn't even just encouragement. This is incentivizing, right? And
Mhm.
when you tax certain behavior, you reduce it, and when you subsidize or incentivize behavior, it's going to increase.
Mhm.
How is that not the same as what China did that led to the population boom that then had to lead to um, not- the one child policy ultimately, but then even before that, they said, hey, have fewer kids later in life and longer gaps in between them, right? They
So you're
had that
saying
campaign.
before that, those campaigns, before that, you're saying that they had a purposeful or an incentivized baby boom?
I don't even think theirs was incentivized necessarily, other than it was encouraged and celebrated.
Okay. Culturally.
Right.
Okay. Well, here my thing is it would have to come with lots of stipulations, and my thing is
Right.
also a lot of the things that people talk about in the government are just terrible. And when I hear one that might incentivize good behavior, if well planned, I do get slightly
Yeah.
excited. So that's fair. And I'm always eager to give Trump a win. Like I always want to, and he just loses every time. So I always want to like assume the best of him. But it would have to come with a lot of caveats. Like I was saying, it would have to come with the stipulation that in order to maintain it or to not get it revoked or so, I don't even know how that would work. But you need to be married because or else you're just having kids out of wedlock and you're going through all these like court proceedings and stuff and setting up child support and all this other bullshit and then setting up like
Yeah.
welfare and stuff and that gets gamed and all that other stuff. So yeah, it'd have to be the incentives would have to be very tightly oriented so that towards getting married and staying married and having kids. And even then, I wouldn't want it to be like, okay, we're gonna pay you like $5,000. I actually think that's a bad idea
Right.
because that's just increasing spending. So that's retarded. We got to be decreasing spending. That's the only thing you can do to reduce taxes or inflation is to reduce spending. Like just giving
Hmm.
you money or just giving you money or reducing taxes doesn't do anything because that just causes inflation. So um you have to cut spending.
Yeah. I agree 100%. That's kind of where I was going. I don't want to see any incentives from the government because
Centrally
that's
planned,
just
yeah.
essentially more spending. Even if it's just not collecting the tax, maybe it's just a tax break. I don't know how they were going to do it.
Right.
But like let's just stop spending on other things. Let's try to bring down the cost of living. And then that big everyone on the list or the high percentage said they can't afford to. I mean, that's a huge reason that they do that. But then how many people didn't check they can't afford to, but they need two incomes, right? And so if you need those two incomes, then you know the wife is not going to want to have kids if she's trying to have a career because she's planning on having this income. I just feel like
Good point.
that mindset has to be intertwined, even if it's not just blatant or explicit. Hey, I'm not going to have a kid because I'm going to have this career. They're thinking their whole lives, hey, I'm going to have this career, which is fine. But if you're just thinking, hey, I might have some supplemental income until I want to have a kid or something, be a very different career choice, be a very different life. So I just think, yeah, like you said, incentivizing, not incentivizing, but addressing other issues with the economy, I think would naturally increase these numbers without incentivizing, which I think is just going to lead to artificially high child rates or has that potential. And then now we're going to overcorrect. I just can't imagine a scenario where it doesn't turn into the same issue that happened in China.
We do need to I think we need to foster or cultivate a culture of promoting people who are ready to have kids. Like putting that kind of
Yeah.
pressure on people. Like obviously it's a very personal thing. So only someone close with someone would know. It can't you're right, it can't really be centrally planned. You can't you can't like reduce people's taxes because that just causes more borrowing or printing. You
Yeah.
have to reduce spending. So at the end of the day, I think it's better to have that be more of a cultural movement. Probably, you're probably right. But you know what? This also, even if that's true, and I also honestly don't think a lot of these things have a good chance of getting passed because I've been hearing about them for years, anyways. But I think maybe what this could do is send a positive signal out to maybe young adults to at least think that okay, Trump thinks it's cool to have kids. Elon thinks it's cool to have kids. Maybe we should start having kids again or
Right.
something. So I think it's at least sending positive energy out. But I think if it
Yeah.
actually got implemented, then it might be, I think, it more of a negative, as you're saying. I don't think governments incentivizing things is ever really a good idea.
Yeah. Even the encouragement kind of rubs me the wrong way, but that'd be way better. I wish they would focus on, encourage just good behavior when it comes to fiscal responsibility, economic responsibility at all levels instead of this increased spending. And I think that would, at every level, even like on an individual level, all the way up to the federal government, it would naturally help this issue correct itself, I
I
think.
don't know though. I think that like you have to make people think it's something that you're supposed to do because I honestly think people staying I think a large amount of people want to be forever kids too. I think that's a big thing. Or like I don't think it's all about the economy for not having kids a lot of the time. I also think it's a mindset thing. So maybe there's a better way of changing people's mindsets other than the president doing a stunt like this maybe, but I mean I can see your concerns. Maybe I'm not thinking about
Oh,
it. Maybe I'm being a little more flippant about it than I really should be, but
I don't know, man. I think I agree 100% that it's a mindset. I'm thinking about, okay, what would the mindset, what would the proper appropriate mindset be that we should be encouraging? And then B, who should be encouraging that? I don't really want the government encouraging me to be any certain way.
mm,
So kind of any way that they're going to do it rubs me the wrong way. But then like Tucker, I know I've mentioned this a couple times, but he said one time that he thinks one of the best things a young man can do is have kids. Which when I heard it the first time, I was like, wow, that's crazy. Sounds super irresponsible. But then it's like, okay, well, if you're doing it under the right conditions, you're not just going out and having a kid unmarried and you're gonna pay child support. It's like, no, you have a sense of direction in your life early, or you're married, you have a kid, and now you have to have that sense of direction, right?
mhm.
Um, it kind of forces you to live a certain way and not be that kid. It's kind of like what you were saying. So I don't know exactly. That's something I'm going to think about some more. Is where the encouragement and direction and cultural change should start. But I agree with you. It can't just be like just start having kids while you are still trying to be a kid. But at the same time, I don't know if economic incentives are going to be good enough or just fixing the economy. I think that would address some of the issues, but probably not all of them. I think encouraging traditional family values and entrepreneurship and taking ownership of um, being a productive member of society would be a start. Because I think that would maybe negate some of the just be a kid forever mentality that you were talking about.
I think another thing too. I mean, I don't. I've never lived in an age where this was important, like the actual biological drive to have children, to have your tribe not die out.
Yeah,
So I've never lived through a time like that, and I don't really have that sense anyways.
yeah,
In except for like in recent memory, or like recent years where I've been thinking more about culture and how like influxes of immigrants who don't really have to assimilate or really have any incentive to assimilate, I guess.
yeah,
How that kind of affects the culture that I'm in. I've never really thought about. I've always kind of been in a bubble, but I think that the idea of God, where was I going with this? I took too long to set it up. I just think that we're gonna edit this out because I've lost my train of thought. You talk about something.
Well, I was gonna just add that I feel like this might be a good thing to follow up on next week. I feel like just having a sense of just a rough outline. Like right now, I'm drawing a blank on where to even start, but where would, in my mind, where should we start to shift society culturally that would make a lot of these problems go away? You know what I mean? Like, are
Hmm.
there first principles or something similar to a first principle that you would have for economics or whatever? Do you do you have that for a cultural point? And you say, hey, let's get back to this, emphasize this, and it would solve a lot of these issues. And I bet people like Jordan Peterson have probably thought or spoken a lot or written a lot about that. Or Thomas Sowell always talks about what does he say? Education and marriage and a job or something like that.
Mm. You know what? I've
But
actually,
yeah, how do you get?
I think I've got back to my point. So let me finish it before I
Yeah, go ahead.
completely
Please do.
blank out on it because you actually helped me remember. But essentially, I think that people don't really have to think about the whole reason I brought up the tribe thing was because people don't really have to think about that now because kind of your tribe is the country, but the country isn't really
Right.
a people anymore. You don't really
Yeah.
have like a people. You're just like a country that like factories in and out people. So like a bunch
Yeah.
of immigrants can come in and they're increasing the population. So you don't really have to worry about your population at all. But then you have to think what like what's happening to the country in the meantime. So I don't know. Just like I think that I I don't know. I have a fondness like personally for the American culture that I grew up in, and I just feel like with all this, I just feel like the more power that liberals are able to get through like an influx of different like cultures and stuff instead of like our own American culture breeding itself back into
Yeah.
fruition or whatever, it's just gonna get worse because these people vote a certain way, and no matter whether we like it or not, we live in a democratic republic, and people voting has like a lot of power. So
Right.
what I sense is that we're on a very slippery slope towards basically Democrats getting whatever they want. And I know that we're having a really good time with Trump being president because it kind of thwarts that and it puts it into a little bit of a stalemate, which is always good to have.
Yeah.
Things at least not getting worse. But I don't know. I just have a lot of fear for the amount of power I feel like that they could gain in the future. And the only way I think to combat that, I think that a lot of people say like, "Oh, our birth rates are going down or whatever. We need more people." And what they mean by that is not that we need more immigrants. I feel like a lot of people what they mean in their heart is we need more native Americans, and by that I mean anyone born in America. We need more of
Right. Right.
those people, like that stock of people, because they care about the country. I feel like we grow up in a country now where, I mean, I know this doesn't sound very anarchistic of me, but I still, I live in America and I've been brainwashed all my life to have some patriotism, a little bit of pride in the country or whatever that I live in.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's changing really fast. Like I accept things now, like this whole Oblivion remastered thing with the pronouns and stuff and all these other changes they make.
Yeah.
Every day I find more things that they change that piss me off. That it's like, why did you have to change that? Like I found out today that the stat differences between sexes is gone. Now all sexes have the same stats. You just have an origin that changes your stats. And it's so
Oh,
small
really?
and stupid, but it's like, gosh, we're just erasing the fact that genders have any unique identity at all. Like there's no difference
Yeah.
between a man and a woman. I don't know. I'm on a long track now, but this is where I was going initially before I fucking lost my point because I'm too damn high and talking about all this crazy stuff and trying to keep it all on track. But that's my problem with it. I feel like we're on a slippery slope towards losing anyone in America that cares about America and that would vote conservative and try to keep things from going absolutely fucking bonkers
Yeah.
in the future. Because I feel like we're already there and I'm already slowly accepting things that I never would have accepted in the past. Like all this craziness in video games and stuff.
Yeah. I think you really made me consider, like, initially when we were talking about the list of issues that people didn't want to have kids or made them not want to have kids. I was thinking, okay, well, if you solve the economy, you're going to get rid of some of the people who are just concerned about the state of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to go away for some people. The people who can't afford to, that's going to go away. And then I was thinking, you're also going to have fewer women who feel like they have to because right now I feel like you have the women who feel like they have to do it for cultural reasons, like for the feminist movement, or they can't just be another woman who's a housewife. But then you also have a large percentage who just feel like they have to because otherwise how are they going to afford a family? And if you get rid of that because the economy is doing better,
Mm.
then I feel like you won't have just a small percentage. It's probably not that small, but it feels smaller than it should be of people working at home. But I did not consider that you brought up a couple times is just the people wanting to basically still be kids, even into, middle adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I really want to consider for next week, maybe touch on. I want to give it some thought over the next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also you mentioned, not it's not just a population issue. I always think about the family. I forget what we learned when we were studying Chinese, what they call it, the Dazi Yuan, where you had just like all the generations of families living together.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Think about that with our culture. It's like you already have, so many parents living in nursing homes and just not with the family. And I would want I would worry about that. Who's going to take care of our generation or the next generation if there's not enough kids? Like the immigrants aren't going to want to take care of other people's parents, the natives' parents, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to care about that the way we would, and we probably already aren't. But that would be I don't know how big of a concern that is, but it feels like that would be a huge drain on the economy, number one. And number two, it just suck for that whole generation that's not being taken care of by people who love and care about them. So I don't know how much of a concern that is overall, but that's
I never
something in
really
my mind
thought
that's
I never really thought much about that whole concept until you pitched the idea of the farm to me. And then I was
oh
like,
yeah.
I fell in love with that idea. I was like, yeah, of course. Like there's so much anxiety, I feel like, especially as me like as a firstborn son, I feel like
Yeah.
um there's a lot of pressure like in the future if something happens with one of my parents or something, like I feel like it would be on me. So, but if you lived in a system where you weren't putting all that pressure on whoever feels like shouldering the entire burden, it was more if it was more like a family unit type thing where
Right.
people helped each other out more and had more synergy together instead of just kind of fucking off and doing their own thing entirely. There'd be more of a safety
Yeah.
net and we wouldn't all be spread out like dependent on the government to catch us instead of like a net we could have made ourselves, which is like completely
Right.
gone nowadays. So yeah, I think I like that whole concept. It would be good to Trump should definitely pay everybody $10,000 to do that each, including the babies in the family.
Yeah, man. And something else you said about oh, the stat differences between men and women just made me think I was going to tell you this. But we were playing ball the other day, basketball, and I show up and there was a girl there, and there's almost never a girl there. And I was just wondering, I was like, okay, how is she just here with somebody or is she gonna play? And she ended up playing. And she's not really helping the team, but she has played basketball before. But I'm just thinking she's playing with a bunch of, you know, middle-aged guys who probably never even played college ball. I don't even know how many of them played high school. We're all out of shape. She's barely keeping up. I mean, see, the best thing you could say is that she's not a huge liability. That's all. She's just a small liability. And then I just find out, oh, she's getting ready to go. She had to leave a little bit early to
To
make
the
it to her
Olympics.
collage basketball. Yeah, she's
Right.
playing college basketball. She had to go to practice, and I'm just like, wow, this is how can people even say or not acknowledge the difference or say that there should be parity when there's. I mean, if there was a guy who played college basketball that showed up to runs with us, I mean, people wouldn't even want to play against him. Like it would just be so demoralizing to even try to guard him.
Mm.
And
It's so silly
I don't
too
know.
because in the game, like as silly as it is in real life, you can always say, "Well, it's just a game." But in the game, you have access to things like willpower and agility, things that like females could like excel at, theoretically, or
Yeah.
whatever. There's all kind like there's like the stats like there's one called speed or whatever. Obviously, men are faster. Fuck. I mean, we are dominant at everything. Damn it. Even willpower. Fuck.
Well,
Well,
the problem to
whatever.
me isn't even that they are making them equal. I don't care. It's just that it wasn't the same and now it is the same. It's like you made a conscious decision, change this. That's what's weird to me. Like if you're just making a game and you just want to have different, character skins and start with the same stats, I don't really care.
Right. Oh yeah.
I'll barely
Absolutely.
think about it.
Absolutely.
But
By default, like just do it that way. That's fine because people like to play with female skins anyways. Don't even make it
yeah,
about the real world. But these are the games obviously that our peers play, and they want like that kind of control, like that or
yeah,
that level of like they
realism.
realism. Simulated whatever realism. So
Yeah,
I don't know. It's so silly, man.
just operate within the world that you've created. If you create that to be something that's going to make a difference, just
Right.
make it make sense. Be consistent.
Exactly. I wish I could just be in one of those board meetings for once and just see like how does that get brought up? Is it as mean as I think it is? Like, is it as vindictive? Is the real word as I think it is? Like where it's like, I can't wait to see them react to this. Oh man, I can't wait to see them react to us changing it to type 1 and type 2 bodies instead of male and female.
Do you think it's like that, or do you think there's just somebody in the meeting that has this idea and this agenda,
Hmm.
and everyone else is just like people like you and me that if we're in this meeting and we're not having this the topic of conversation isn't like let's debate whether or not we should do this. They just pitch this idea, and you're like, it's a terrible idea, but I don't want to get fired for being sexist
Oh, I
at
think
my
it
job
is
right
that
now.
way. I think it is that way. But I think that the people who make that decision are happy about it. I would say, but
You think so?
I don't think the people who are making the decision, not the people who just have to go through with it, because I think 99% of them probably think like us, but
Oh yeah.
the people
Okay.
who
You're
make
talking
the
about the people who like bring it up.
yeah, the people
It's their
who
idea or whatever.
it's the people who are in charge of this thing. There's probably like there's obviously going to be some liberal arts major or whoever staffed to make these sorts of decisions. Corporate's just like, okay, this is
Okay.
your job is to think about these kinds of what's going to piss everybody off. And obviously, the thing that would piss people off the least would just be to leave it as it is. No one cares. Even people on Reddit don't
Don't change
care.
anything. Yeah.
Right, but no, they're going to make the argument that no, the best what people are really into now is taking gender out of everything. It's just not even a concept anymore. It's whatever you want it to be.
I feel like this could be real quick, and it's actually perfect because I didn't want to talk about this long anyway.
So okay, yeah.
If
Well,
that's okay with you.
if it is quick, then I'm fine with it.
Well, yeah. Let me before you hit play.
Yeah,
I just want to give a quick overview because I always have to
please.
go through what is a trade deficit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just gonna
I have
speak
to
out
look it up
loud
every
for
time.
anybody listening who
Yeah,
doesn't know, and then speak to why people are saying it's bad, and just kind of think through it logically real quick, and then listen to this video.
please.
So a trade deficit is this is why I always think of it wrong. It's because we are importing more goods than we're exporting. And to me, once I do that, I don't have a deficit, right? I would think, oh, I have more goods, I have a surplus.
Mm,
That's what is wrong in my head. It's backwards to me, but I get it. So they're saying, hey, we're spending more money out than we're getting in, right?
mm,
And I just feel like that gets it's instantly viewed as negative. I think Trump thinks it's negative, or it sounds negative when he's speaking about it. I think people are saying, well, yeah, the jobs that are producing these things are going overseas, so that's probably a negative. I understand why people are thinking that way, but if you think about it logically, it doesn't make sense. Either if we have a trade deficit, we are just getting more stuff, and that's really what we want is we want stuff. Who cares about the money? And if we have a trade surplus, it's because we're making things that other people want. So either way, those can be a good thing. It's not just inherently bad, right? The problem comes from when we have to we have the trade deficit, but we're not producing enough. So now we have to borrow money to keep up that trade deficit. And who's borrowing the money? A lot of times it's the government, but it can be anybody, any overspending to the point where you have to borrow to keep up. That's the negative, right?
mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, it kind of just goes back to me, just to summarize, these are inherently not a bad thing because they're just voluntary exchanges between different countries. And most of the time, we give them more money for their goods, then that money would eventually come back to us because they're going to either buy our goods or invest in something that we're doing, right? And naturally, just if we have a prosperous economy, we're going to have a trade deficit because we're going to have more money. Our money's going to be more valuable. We're going to be spending more, right?
Hmm.
Anyway, so to me, um, the reason I bring this up in relation to tariffs is because I feel like when Trump was explaining or people were explaining Trump's tariffs, they're just saying, "Hey, these are reciprocal, right? These other countries are taxing us. We're going to tax them at a smaller amount, but just to disincentivize them to do that or to get money back because we're taxing their stuff." Does that make sense? That's kind of how it was pitched, right?
Right. That's like the
All right. I just
ideal
wanted you
version
to,
of that, right?
yeah, I think that's how they were pitching it to make it sound good.
Right. Right. I don't know if that's how it works. Like, I don't know the mechanics of it, Like, maybe it just doesn't work like that at all, But it
Right.
sounds
No, it
everything
probably
sounds
doesn't.
good to me. You could they've
Okay.
sold me on it. And I wanted to say one thing
All
before
right.
we start the video as well. I wanted to
Yeah, yeah, go
say,
ahead.
and this might open up a whole can of worms. So if it does, and we need to like go
Yep.
deeper, that's perfectly fine. Or we can get into the video. But what I wanted to say is, a lot of times people on the right that I kind of associate myself with,
Yep.
at least empathetically and more so spiritually, I guess, like Sam Hyde and Nick Fuentes, I think what they would say is some of this stuff that we get from them is not actually of any actual value. So it's like the value is all in Americans' heads, and Americans are retarded, so they're buying retarded junk from China that's all shit. So we're like giving them a lot of money, but not actually getting a lot of valuable tech in return. Is there any validity to that at all? I just feel like I've heard
I
that
think
enough
value
times that
is
haven't thought about. Go ahead, sorry.
I feel like value is subjective. What does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I find value in the thing that they're giving me and I give my money for it, what who are you to say, "Oh no, there's no value in that."
Mm-hmm.
Right? I chose to buy that over something I could have bought here. There's no like there's a seemingly no limit on the number of goods that I could buy of different uses. Why is the ones I want to get from China, why are they low value? I don't understand that.
I think it doesn't make any sense to me because I think that we get like almost everything from China, whether it's like low value junk or good stuff. So I've always thought it never made sense for that reason because basically China's market it does include junk, but then you have junk in America too, and you have good quality items in America
Right.
too, like quality
Right.
materials. So like, but I feel like it's more lopsided towards um us getting the better end of the stick as far as like materials and processed goods that we need to build things over here, like put them together. We seem to be at least increasing like our ability to do like assembly and stuff like that with these giant factories that Elon's producing, which is pretty cool. Um, so yeah. Anyways, the only reason I brought it up was because I wanted to see if you thought there was any validity to that, or if you were in agreement with me, and I didn't want to taint you or anything, so I didn't want to say anything. But I feel the same way. I just feel like um, we get all kinds of shit from China. It's a mixed bag, but it's
Yeah.
like a mixed bag here too. So that yeah, that argument. I think people
That's the thing. Yeah.
people just focus too much on the junk, but they don't think about the billions and trillions of dollars that get spent in like materials that are coming and going because they're not in that world. They don't think about that stuff. The other stuff's probably small potatoes, honestly.
Right. Well, and I think maybe I think you could have an argument about whether or not certain things should be considered junk and whether we should be spending money on junk, but I just don't think it matters where it comes from. And value
Mm.
is subjective. So I just feel like those 2 points of the argument, it seems like they're making a point or arguing against buying stuff from China. I feel like that's not an argument against that.
Yeah, and I don't really understand the math anyways. I think they do some mental judo to think that like money that leaves the US is a bad thing. Like I'd have to really think. I've never really been able to think it through and think and come out on it other than just being totally neutral on it because I don't know like what does it mean
Well,
for money to leave the US? Because isn't the
here's
entire economy like in a I think of it like a river kind of like it's all flowing around.
Yeah, think of it this way real quick and tell me if this helps.
Please.
If we have, let's say we're on the gold standard, right? We just using gold, so we can't just print it. And really, I mean, that's just representative of how productive we are, right?
Hmm.
So if country A is being productive, then they're going to be able to get more goods for the goods that they produce or for the services they provide. So that's going to translate into they're selling their goods or services, they're getting a lot of gold. Now they have a lot and they can buy a lot of stuff. But if it's the other way around and they are spending more gold than they're receiving, eventually they're going to run out of gold and not be able to buy anything. So they're either going to have to, well, they're just going to have to borrow it unless they can start producing things that would get them more gold back. So the only thing that not the only thing, but the big difference with the way things are now is it's the same thing. We just end up, if we're going to overspend, that's what I was saying. The problem with the trade deficit is that eventually, if it continues for an extended period of time, we're either going to have to borrow money to keep buying things at the rate we're spending money at the rate we are, or we're going to have to print money, which is kind of has similar effects, right? Either way,
Either way, we're
we're
devaluing
going
the
into
dollar.
debt, devaluing our currency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I think
God,
that's the
you're like
the
three
danger.
three for three on excellent analogies tonight. You're really killing it.
What were my analogies?
Just well, not really. I don't even know if they're analogies, but just your way of explaining things. Yeah, it makes sense.
I'll
Cause
take it. I don't
cause
remember
it
'em.
kind of like balances itself out. Essentially, is what you're saying, right?
Or it doesn't, and then you have a problem.
Right, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. You're not gonna be able to buy anything else. That's so it does balance itself out for a while.
Yeah, well, no, you're exactly right. It does do that unless you end up borrowing, which
But
is when
I was thinking like
and then
even
you
long term with
collapse.
that, right? But then it's
Yeah,
still that's
no, you're
itself
right.
that's self correction. I would think.
It is. You're absolutely right, and it's different. Oh, I was listening to maybe Bob
Mm-hmm.
explain this at some point, but basically, like over time, you know, he always explains. I'm getting sidetracked a little bit, but like child labor, for example, it's going to be more prominent when a country is agricultural or industrious, right? And then it's going to kind of phase out a little bit as they become more like we are, more a little bit more advanced, and you don't need that as much to just raise your family. It's
Mm-hmm.
the same way with like your trade deficit and trade surplus, just different stages of your economy. Sometimes they're going to be balanced. Sometimes it's going to make sense that you have a deficit, and sometimes it'll make sense that you have a surplus, but it does balance out. It's not just inherently bad one way or another.
Right.
Anyway, with this, I just wanted you to see how they because the way I was understanding it, I was like, okay, it kind of makes sense, I guess, if we're just using this. They have tariffs on us. Let's use it on them until they reduce them or something. It kind of makes sense, but hit play on this just for the beginning. I think it starts around 13 seconds if you want to even skip.
President Donald Trump has harder than others. President Trump
Yeah, right
and the
here.
White House shared a series.
Yeah, this was to me. Oh, China has a 67% tariff on us. We're going to put a 34% tariff on them. Right? Makes us look. We are the good guys.
Mm-hmm.
Liberation Day. Yeah, I'm very pro America right now at this point in the video.
Series of charts on social media showing the tariff rates they say other countries impose on the US and how the US will reciprocate.
How did they
So this is like the beginning tariffs, like how it was originally.
No, this is what Trump was announcing.
So this is what he's done.
He he's saying, I mean, you can't even read the fine print in this video hardly, but he's basically
Oops.
tariffs charged to the USA,
Yeah.
right? 67% China. I'm just going to use that one. So then the USA reciprocal tariffs, he's calling them discounted. Okay, we're only going to do half of what they're doing to us.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't we so generous? But
Right.
then hit play. Listen to how they
Say
came
other
up with these
countries impose
numbers.
on the US and how the US will reciprocate.
How did they get to those tariff rates? I think that when we figured out that was a little puzzling because
I'm guessing they did a little bit of math magic.
You know what
Oh,
we
they're going to
have
show
confirmed
us.
now is the way
Pause it.
they got to those.
Yeah. So let me explain exactly what this means. I'm just kidding. It's gibberish to me.
Okay, I
But
thought
she
you really
explains it.
were.
You can hit play.
Damn it!
No.
I was so looking forward to your explanation.
Those rates. There's the formula. It looks kind of complicated, but it's actually rather simple.
I realize. Okay, it's probably gonna be really easy, but I realize I don't have a brain for economics. I only have enough brain for economics to explain the basics, but whenever you talk about it or something, I just feel like you have a grasp on it that I don't have. And also, you do
Well,
probably know what this fucking means too.
I don't know what this means. I love economic theory,
Hmm.
listening to people talk about it. I hate when they come down to these mathematical models. I don't know how important that is in all economics. I feel like maybe in Austrian economics it's not as prominent,
Hmm.
but even the economists then, I'm sure they could, grapple with these. And I don't even have an interest. I almost stopped playing the video as soon as it showed up. I'm glad I listened to her because she explains it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll let it go.
Simple. They took the trade deficit, the administration took the trade deficit and divided it by the imports from that country to the United States, and then assumed that
All right,
that
pause it.
number, that
Go back just a little bit, just so I can see the formula and act like it's helping.
Yeah.
So the top is the trade deficit, right?
Okay.
And then they divided it by the imports. Is that what she said?
from that country to the United States, and then assumed that that number, that is the way they got to those rates. There's the formula. It
Yeah.
looks kind of complicated, but it's actually rather simple. They took the trade deficit, the administration took the trade deficit and divided it by the imports from that country.
The trade deficit, which is
Right.
the net loss in
So
USD
right.
over the net import or the imports.
Yep.
What is that supposed to tell you? I'm not putting it together.
Well, I don't know what it's telling us exactly, but what it's not telling us is the tariffs that they're placing on our on our goods. So they're not reciprocal tariffs. He's just
Right.
viewing, okay, hey, there's a trade deficit between us and China. So I don't know the exact number, but I think it's something like maybe they're close to we spend 500 million. That's probably does that even make sense? Would it be million? Anyway,
Gotta be billion.
500 compared to our 300 maybe.
Okay.
That that so we spend 500 to them and they spend 300 to us or something like that. That's rough math.
Hmm.
And then they divide it by the number of imports, which I don't even know. I don't even know how that adds to this equation. I'm not smart enough. But
Right.
all I'm saying, the reason I wanted to talk about trade deficits before is to say, hey, these aren't inherently good or bad, right? I would say we should have a trade deficit with China
Hmm.
because they're producing everything that's so cheap for us. And then we would just want to have a trade surplus somewhere else so we can have money to have that to pay for that trade deficit with China.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I said we should have a trade deficit with China. I don't know what we're producing that maybe would benefit them. We could have balanced trade with them, but I know that they provide a lot of goods that we need that are cheaper because they're made in China. That's beneficial to us.
Hmm.
And as long as we make up that money somewhere and we're not just going into debt over it, that's not a problem. But because of this, they say, no, no, it is a problem. And we're going to add 34% tariffs to China. That's wild. It was wild when it was reciprocal, but this just makes, now I understand how much less sense this makes actually.
Yeah, it's
I don't
interesting.
know. That's all I had on this. I wanted you to appreciate how confusing that was to me.
It's insanely confusing. Yeah, I still don't understand what's going on at all. I don't know what that number is supposed to represent at all. In my head, I always thought reciprocal tariffs meant we were going to match them one for one or something. I know the
Well,
China
they
one.
say discounted reciprocal. If you read the chart, they slip in a discounted reciprocal in there.
I don't even know what discounted reciprocal means.
Just means we're not doing it. It's reciprocal, but not equal. Like we're doing it cheaper.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
USA discounted reciprocal tariffs. This is so misleading.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems so fork tongued that I can't even follow. This kind of
All right, that
shit,
took.
I don't know who it's meant for, but for me, it just goes in one ear and out the other. When it doesn't make sense, I just assume you're lying because I'm a reasonable person. I feel like if you're talking to me reasonably, then I'll understand what you're saying. If I don't, then you're just trying to bullshit me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, um,
I don't want to keep you on longer. I had that one thing that I was going to ask you
yeah, go for
from
it.
earlier in the week. I can save it for next week if you'd rather close it out now.
No, I thought I was like found a good way, kind of to ramp it down a little bit, but it didn't work at all. So
Sorry, dude.
let's just keep the momentum going.
I was like, no, no, no. Let's go full blast.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So here's what I was thinking, and you tell me maybe this would be terrible, but I was thinking that it would be interesting, just to see if I could throw out like five. It doesn't even have to be five, 3 to 5 um, objections to anarcho-capitalism or libertarianism, like common objections, and see if you could just dismantle them quickly, like in a one-liner or maybe like a quick. Just what would your immediate response be to kind of shut that down? Does that make sense?
You're really killing me, but yeah, go ahead.
Is
Let's see how
this
hard this
interesting to you at
is.
all?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just I feel like I'm gonna feel like a retard when I'm trying to respond. But go
No,
ahead.
that's fine. It'll make it fun. It'll just be like a segment. You can do it to me next week.
Yeah.
All right. How would contracts be enforced without government?
Hmm. It's difficult because when Bob Murphy lays it all out, I feel like he starts with a foundation really well, and that's something that it's hard for me. Like once the system spun
Yeah.
up, I understand how everything intertwines, but how would contracts be enforced? Hmm.
How would you answer this if I weren't me? I'm not looking for like a textbook answer, just more like you're explaining libertarianism or anarcho-capitalism to somebody, and they're just not getting it. They're like, man, this is. But what about my contracts, man? What are we gonna do?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer would be to say there would be private arbitration for contracts, and if you break a contract with somebody, then maybe in the future when you sign a contract with somebody and you need it to be whatever the process is, like notarization or something, or
Yeah.
I don't know, something like that, some way of like verifying that you're a trustworthy person. I think you're just gonna tarnish your own reputation to the point where no one's willing to work with you. Potentially, that might be the repercussion. But um, yeah, I think that it depends on what stage of anarcho-capitalism you're in. Like once a lot of these systems have been made up, which I think that it would be like a gradual thing anyway. So I think
Yeah.
no one would use them until they were working well. Essentially, you're gonna have some guinea pigs and stuff,
Yeah.
but people who use like different methods, like sidestepping the government, I think will become more prevalent. And I think eventually, when people realize that there are better ways of arbitrating disputes than using the government as a middleman, which is extremely inefficient, then I think it'll catch on more, and then you'll worry more about your trustworthiness, I guess, within whatever new system of contract law there is set up or whatever. So I don't know. I think the hardest part is getting it spun up. I think that's the difficult part to explain. But once you have something spun up, I think there will be systems in place to keep track of how trustworthy you are. You'd have some sort of rating or something like that, and if you're a good person, then you would show up for arbitration and follow through with whatever you signed your contract for. That, I guess, would be my answer.
I think you're absolutely right. And for these questions, let's assume we're already in Ancapistan. You're just explaining to them how things work, that we don't have to worry about the in between, because I know
I
that's
see what you're
that's a
saying.
trickier topic that we should hash out a few ideas on how to transition at some point.
I think I
I'm gonna write that
maybe
down.
I'm I think I'm assuming that the person is going to come back at me with well, how does that going to work or something like that. So I think I'm
Right.
like thinking too far ahead in the process. If
Preemptively, yeah,
yeah, I'm preempting.
arguing.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. No, but I think that was a perfect answer. And kind of you could just point to Yeah, these things already exist. Like when I enter a contract, I can't even think of one that I've entered into that doesn't already have, hey, we're gonna if something happens, we're gonna arbitrate with this company. It never is like, oh, we're going straight to court.
Right. So court is like the
So
government's version of that, right? There's nothing less serious than that the government tries to compete with private arbitration with, really, right? So it's like really mainstream to just use a private company to deal with a contract.
yeah,
Okay, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, we're
yeah, I
already
I
halfway
think that
there.
is, and then okay, well, what if you don't? It's like to me, maybe this is another discussion. I'll say this and go on to the next one, but
Hmm.
to me, it's not. Um, if you owe me money, then it's not aggression for me to take that money from you if you're not paying. If that makes any sense,
Hmm.
it's aggression of you to not give me the money, right? You have my property now.
Right.
So I think, I mean, there's obviously got to be like some commonly accepted rules. I can't just like kill you and take it. I don't think that would be right, but there's got to be some societal norms that'll lead to that. Maybe that'd be interesting also. But
Maybe if it was like a
I'm writing that down.
like a landlord, lease situation or something like that, they may not necessarily have the right to just barge into your domicile and take the money out of your safe or
Exactly.
something, but you'd already be living in a community where people, have some level of, you've agreed to some level of like policing of your behavior. So if you don't pay up,
Yeah.
then you might have some private police to come in to, separate everybody out and settle some monetary dispute or something like, I don't know. Whatever happens,
Yeah.
but yeah, there'd be some kind of like enforcement probably.
All right. I'll try to rapid fire these just so that we don't extend too long.
Yeah, me too. I was trying to overthink it. I'm
Um,
sorry.
no, you're good. Um, all right. Um, how would you regulate product safety?
Well, I think that's a good point. Um, because there are already like a lot of um potentially harmful things like certain unnatural dyes and stuff like that already get through. So I think my
Yeah.
my argument would be that even with government, um, you already have things getting through like red dye number whatever the fuck it is. Everybody knows what it is. Just go look it up. But you have things like that leaking through, and I think that instead of trusting the government to allow those things, because God knows like what incentives there were to allow that through and not some other things because of how like strict they are with these things. Like that automatically raises my suspicions, anyways. But my point would be like compared to what like how it is now, where um, the government arbitrarily decides and they let certain cancer causing things through and certain things they don't. I'd rather just have um, I'd rather trust a private source, and I think generally people already do anyways. I think a lot of times you could look something up like where they're selling it and not understand a damn thing they're talking about. Like all the government regulated disclosures they have to do on the packaging and shit like that. Like you'll never understand what those chemicals are, what they do for you. I think most people already
Yeah.
fucking like if I want to know whether something's good or bad for me, I go fucking look it up on YouTube or ask AI or something. Like I don't trust
Yeah.
the government to tell me that anyways. So why would I trust them to like tell people who can and can't make certain goods? Like who gives a fuck if people drink raw dairy milk? Like who gives a shit? Like who cares if that
Yeah.
upsets their stomachs and they're up all night puking or something or get some kind of a brain worm? Who gives? I don't care. It's their fault. Like they have so much. They have all the infinite wisdom of mankind at their fingertips, and they still made a retarded decision. Well, then let them fucking make it. And I think other people, can make their own decisions. I think, and people already don't use the government. That would be my point. People already don't use the government. They don't trust the government. People look it up for themselves generally,
Right.
anyways, and everyone has all the wisdom of mankind on their phone already. So that would be my answer.
I agree with you, and I just add that I feel like they don't use the government unless the government kind of has it like the FDA, and when it comes to like drugs and stuff, you have to.
Right, exactly.
So
Yeah.
then when you have to do that, either out of necessity because of rules or regulations, or just because the government subsidizes it, makes it free to have this regulation. So now it's costly and it doesn't really make sense to have this secondary regulation or even just, maybe reviews or whatever for certain products that you would have to do that if the government wasn't already doing it and subsidizing it poorly.
Mhm.
And I think the FDA, just for example, and I'll shut up after this, is an example of they let bad things through regularly and then people just blindly trust them because the FDA said it's okay. And they hold up things that could be life-saving because they, for whatever bureaucratic reason, they have to either protect themselves or they're being lobbied against or whatever. And it's like, man, if you could just let these things go to market, the market would sort of stuff out way faster. Anyway, all right.
I think the most frustrating part of all that is the right to try, like the right to just try
Yeah,
drugs that could possibly help you, and have a shot. And the fact
yeah,
that they keep that away from people who are terminally ill just makes no sense to me. That infuriates me to think about.
yeah, exactly. All right. What was that? Number two? I got three more, but I think they're going to be real easy
Okay, go
because
for it.
one we've already talked about a bunch, and then the other two are just simple.
I'm gonna try one
Uh,
paragraph
what
at once.
about what about the poor people that aren't getting welfare anymore?
Mm, well, I think that poor people. Well, I think that generally my answer would be the economy would just be so much better unregulated that
Yeah,
there'd be less poor people. My other point
right,
is there's always going to be poor people because poor people is always a percentage of the population because that's the most convenient way
right.
to make everybody feel bad. No one's ever going to
Yeah,
say that there's like 200 poor people who are actually like dying of starvation in America out of like 350 billion. Like, does anybody even die of starvation in America? Like, is that even a thing? I've never even heard of it. I've heard of people dying of like diabetes and like heart attacks, but does anybody that's not having an eating disorder die of um, starvation? I just don't think it's a
there are a
thing.
lot of people when it comes to like drugs. I bet if drugs are a part of your life, or if you have kids and they're a part and you're on drugs or something, and you're not
Right.
getting, maybe you're getting food, but it's not nutritious.
Okay,
But
true.
I agree with your point. I just think there's those types of situations probably more often than just no access to food.
Right. Well, I think that the government incentivizes people to stay below a certain poverty line, a certain poverty threshold. I don't have to
Hmm.
tell anybody about the SNAP benefit card abuse and stuff that goes on and all kinds of other things. I
Yeah,
think that in general the what people call poor changes constantly. I think that people call people poor now who live like lives of like kings, basically, with all the modern conveniences you could possibly imagine, anyways, and they all have smartphones and stuff. Even homeless people do. So I don't know.
yeah,
I don't think poor people would become any worse than it currently is. I think if anything, it would only get better because the economy would be better, and I think people who don't rely on the government to take care of people, they don't just assume that the government's going to take care of people, then I think people are more willing to take care of other people. And I also think that when people know that it's out of people's kind of kindness of people's hearts to help them out with things, I think they're more appreciative than if the government they just expect the government to do it. I think we need to live in the real world where if you don't work and you can work, then people should like probably shame you to some degree or something if you're like mooching off of everybody. I don't know. I don't know. I think the
yeah.
world would be better, but yeah, I'm ranting again. I'm not even on topic anymore, but yeah, I think it would.
You're good.
I don't think it would be any worse. If anything, it'd be better. I think.
Yep, I agree. I'm gonna, this will be the last one. I'll just give you a slow ball. Who would build the roads?
Well, I think that anybody who needs a road to be built would build a road. That would be my answer.
And speaking of roads, there's a they closed the road outside my neighborhood, and it's the worst. Everything, I'm late everywhere, and I'm already struggling with being on time. I'm I'm an extra 5 or 10 minutes late
They
everywhere I go
close it
now.
like permanently, or they're just doing work on it constantly.
No, they were replacing something. I don't know if it was some kind of sewer or water line or something underneath it. And then they decided, well, that would be a good time to widen it a little bit because you couldn't turn without stopping traffic. But it's supposed to be done next week. I really hope. I keep walking over there and checking on it. It looks like they're making good progress, so I'm optimistic.
Nice. Well, did you find
All right, man.
any severe deficiencies in any of my reasoning? I mean, I'm just over here like baked out of my mind, and you're asking me the hardest questions ever that I'm obviously going to overthink because they're so simple.
No, I think I was listening to. It was just probably Dave. I don't know who else am I listening to. Why do I think about it? And he would just it seemed like every time I noticed someone has an argument, he just immediately is able to counter it with a fact or a logical reason that whatever they're saying doesn't make sense. And I think a lot of times I'm able to do that. It's way slower than they are, maybe because I'm listening to them at double speed, but I just feel like there's no way I could do it as quickly as they are. So I just thought, man, it'd be maybe good practice to just kind of make a list of these common ones and kind of have those readily available because when you think about it, all the objections don't make sense. And Bob always puts it perfectly. He says, "Hey, compared to what? Let's compare apples to apples here. You're acting like we right now we live in the perfect society and there's no poor people. It's like there are poor people now and there'll be poor people in Kapistan,
Mm-hmm.
but one way they will have a much better economy. And before we had the government taking care of people, that's another thing, man. And I'm getting long-winded, but we talked about the FDA. Since you have the FDA, then you don't have to like you can rely on that and you don't necessarily double check them like you would if it was an Amazon review, right?
Mm.
The same thing I feel like happens with welfare. You have the welfare state taking care of the poor people. It's already being subsidized. So there's not as much of an incentive like, oh, I don't have to go take care of these homeless people. I'm already paying taxes that are supposed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
I feel
think
like that would go
that's
away.
yeah, exactly. I think that you rephrased kind of what I was attempting to get at.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Did you have any tweets you wanted to close us out with or save those for next week?
Yeah, as I was gonna bring up last time, I was gonna look through and see if I could find any that were good. But let's see, it might all just be racist shit that Nick Fuentes says. That one day I'm just gonna like give you a whole like grouping of them and just like debunk all of them or agree with them.
Yeah, man. I need you to because I've only ever heard him say semi-reasonable things.
Okay,
And he has so much hate. I need like I need to not be supportive of this guy if he's actually racist
right.
and not just a woke racist.
I think he's a funny guy, and I think that even he finds like he has a limit. I think, and I think a lot of it's just his personality and for show. And
Mhm.
then I think some of
Right.
it's just like him being real and like realistically people can be racist sometimes. And I think he just has that thing where okay, a lot of people might be have like a racist moment in their head and not really say anything. I think he
Yeah.
just doesn't care. He's like, "Oh, I thought of something funny and also racist to say that I kind of believe, but also I know is not like necessarily the best thing to be to like think
Yeah.
or whatever." I think he just says it in the moment because he doesn't care what people think. He's just being human, I think. But also,
He's like
I think he can be a. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna reference Shane Gillis when he's talking about the cheeseburger cuts you off on the highway.
Right, I think he's like
Like
that,
you're a
except
little
for
hungry.
he exactly, except for he doesn't mind broadcasting his hunger exactly sometimes.
Exactly.
So he thinks like it'd be better if everybody was just said what they were thinking anyways. But yeah, so I'll eventually we'll watch like a compilation. I think I could probably just find that on YouTube because he's had a lot of
Oh yeah,
interesting
that'd be good.
debates over the years and stuff, and a lot of interesting like rants. So I could probably find a compilation of his rants, and I think that would be a really good reaction video. But I think this is the only thing I wanted to show you, and I don't even remember how interesting it was. I remember thinking it was interesting enough to bookmark though. So
Okay.
let's see if you find it interesting at all.
How is there more animal death when you're just growing plants?
Have you ever I drove along the highway and you just saw a field of cabbage or a field of cilantro? There's nothing else in that field. There's just dirt and those plants.
Yes.
Everything else has been sterilized out of the situation.
I love this
And
point
so there
already.
is no life. But if you walk in the field where my dairy cows are or beef cows are, there's birds and there's grasshoppers and snakes and
Flipping it.
rabbits and foxes coming out of the grass. The cows are not displacing those animals. They're coexisting together. And then if I kill a cow, we just harvested 3 cows. It was 4 big trunk freezers. That's going to feed my family for an extended amount of time. And that's 1 cow or 3 cows to feed a lot of people for a long time. To get that same amount of calories from vegetables is labor intensive. You think about calories in, calories out. We're always putting more calories into tomatoes than we're taking out. There's no way to grow enough calories of tomatoes to cover the gas and all the inputs that are going into it. And so cows are
That's
taking
crazy to think
grass,
about.
something.
Isn't she making a lot of interesting points? I don't hear it
Yeah.
phrased in this way a lot. And I thought that was interesting. Let's see what she says at the
Well,
end.
the tomatoes aren't even worth it. It sounds like.
Right, exactly. It's almost like we're doing it as like a net net loss, but it's just like for the love of the tomatoes, man. We do it for the love of the game.
Not eat
They're not that
and
good.
is just growing freely.
I love tomatoes. Damn.
It's sunlight and water and turning it into nutrition. And vegetables that we eat in the grocery store are not grown like that.
You know, I don't even like raw tomatoes. I like tomato like sauce, like on pizza and spaghetti and stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's fair. But then at that point, like you're just eating it with stuff that's probably not that good for you.
Right, I guess.
I guess I was just thinking, to me, if you're talking about like Whole Foods, like, oh, this is a tomato. Well, it wasn't going to be that good, but at least I'm eating healthy and gaining something from it. You're not even gaining, you're losing. It's a net loss in calories.
Right. It's really funny. Yeah, we're putting more calories of gas into it than we're getting out in tomatoes. It's insane to think about. All right. Later,
Need to
guys.
see more. Later.